Alright, welcome to the first edit in this course. So we have this landscape image which you must have already downloaded by now. So in Lightroom, of course, you know that you're going to go to import photos and videos, and then you'll see something like this. Just go wherever your file is. So wherever you downloaded that file which I gave you. So I have it right here under one, and you're going to find these two images that we're going to use in this particular case. So let's first of all make sure you can click on check all, make sure these ticks are there, and then just click on import. So you need to import both these files. Okay, once you import them, they come under the library section. All right, so now if I just show you the full view, okay, we have which is zoomed in. So I just zoomed out by clicking on it, and you can control the zooms from here. I'm going to be talking about this later, but basically we have this particular image which I took in New Zealand in a beach called Onroa Beach at Waiheke Island in New Zealand. It's in Auckland. It's a beautiful, beautiful beach. I was kind of scared when I was shooting this because the water was just increasing. It was late into the evening and the water was rising, and I quickly had to do this shoot. So of course I'm going for a long exposure here. Like you can see, I've just tried to blur this incoming water, and I used a shutter speed of 30 seconds here. But as you know, if you've tried landscape photography, especially long exposure photography like this, you must be aware that when you try to do this, other things can really go wrong. For example, yes, I got the sky, I got the nice golden colors of the golden hours, but you can see the rocks here, and a lot of things are totally underexposed, right? So as landscape photographers, we need to use post-processing to correct all this. The second thing was, if I just zoom in to this part here, you want to see these birds which were sitting here, and what was happening was that these birds were continuously flying and they were coming across this sky, so it was looking very beautiful. But I was going for a long exposure, so these birds were not able to come in this frame. So I took another shot at 400th of a second, or I think it was 500th of a second, and I got these two birds here in the sky. Okay, so if you go on to the document that we have here, you might be seeing this in the PDF version. I have not exported it right now, but you'll at least see these things written here. So you can see here that the first thing that we need to do is plan the edit. That's going to be the first step. So what does this mean? This basically refers to just the planning of the shots, as in what exactly is that you're trying to achieve. So of course, the one thing that we're trying to achieve here is that in this first shot, you want to correct a lot of things: exposure, contrast, color, technical things that we're going to go on to later. So that is within this shot itself, right? But also we need to get from this shot, we need to only get the birds into this. So that means we have to create a composite, and that is going to take place in Photoshop, right? So by planning, by this first step, I just mean that it should just be something in your mind, that what is it that I'm trying to achieve with this shot, and that is usually going to refer to composite. For example, what's going to happen is that you come to know right now, just by planning this shot, that okay, we need to correct this shot properly, and then once we correct this shot, we are simply going to copy and paste the settings or whatever we did here by syncing it into this shot. And then later on, so that there's no difference between these two shots when we try to ultimately create the composite inside Photoshop. Okay, because if this is dark, if this is of a different exposure when we edit, it'll be tough to create the composite in Photoshop. So just, the first step is just to kind of get you warmed up. What exactly are you trying to do with this shot? So you should just know at the back of your mind before you actually start editing, okay? But the actual editing process is going to start from the second step, which is the first thing that we're going to correct is shooting and equipment issues. Okay, what does this mean? This means that when you're actually shooting the shot out there, you must have noticed, and you must have experienced this yourself, that a lot of issues come which are not under our control always, right? Because we're not trying to do things fast. For example, in that case, water was rising. I quickly have to just get on with the shot. Okay, I cannot afford to miss that shot. So we're going to correct certain things in this second step. For example, we're going to be correcting lens corrections, cropping, straightening the shot. I'll be talking about chromatic aberration, what it is, and lens and dust and spot removal. Then we'll be moving on to these steps. So first of all, let's start with step number 2, this one, okay, shooting and equipment issues. So I'm going to go over to Lightroom. I'll just close this a bit right now. and I'm going to go over to the develop module. That's where the editing takes place, okay? So what is the first step here? Under the shooting and equipment issues, lens corrections and distortion. So this is pretty easy to fix. Now, when I was in New Zealand, I was actually carrying my kit lens, so I did not want to use a kit lens at this beautiful beach. So I rented from one of the shops there, I rented the 16 to 35 f4 lens, which is one of my favorite lens by Nikon. Canon also has similar, and Sony also has similar lenses, but these are basically wide angle lenses. And no matter how good these lenses are, when you use a wide angle lens, there's bound to be some distortion, which you right now may not be able to make out, but once you correct this image, you'll actually be able to see what the difference is, okay? So if I just go down here, let me quickly close all these tabs so that you see what you will be seeing, okay? By default, everything will be closed. So you want to go to lens corrections, and you just want to enable, just check this option which says enable profile corrections, okay? The moment you do that, just notice the change here. So what happens is, it automatically, because this is a raw file, so it automatically notices what camera are you using, what lens are you using, and accordingly, Lightroom already has the data of what distortion that lens produces normally, and it just corrects it accordingly, okay? In case you don't see it, you can also select your lens manually from here, okay? But it's always better to use a raw file. Sometimes while using a JPEG file, you may not be able to do this, okay? Because it just doesn't recognize your lens and camera automatically. It also recognizes the profile, and basically it just corrects it. So if you want to see the before and after, anytime when you work on these tabs or modules, what you can do is there's just this little icon here. You can click on this and it shows you only the before and after of that particular tab or module, okay? So we did for lens corrections, the profile correction, so before and after. You can see just this was the original, and the moment I did the profile corrections, the lens corrections, it just kind of gets rid of that bit of distortion, okay? So this is already good. Now the second thing here is, we also have something, we'll also come to cropping, but before that, because in this tab itself is chromatic aberration, so let's take care of that. So what is chromatic aberration? Again, it's a lens issue. So if I zoom into here, and by the way, just to zoom in, you just have to click on the image, okay? And if you're not able to zoom in this much, what you can do is just open this window with this arrow here, and you can select how much you want to zoom by here, okay, from here. So I can select like 2:1 also, so it'll go really, really deep. And if you click again, it just comes out. So if I zoom in, what you can see at the edges here are these little fringes, the color fringes that you see. This is referred to as chromatic aberration, and this again is a lens issue. It's just caused by different types of lenses that you can use. Some lenses cause more chromatic aberration, some lenses cause less chromatic aberration, okay? But the point is, even very good lenses like the 1635 f4 are going to cause a bit of chromatic aberration, so it's very easy to correct that, and that is just by clicking on this checkbox. So if you do that, you can see, boom, it just disappears. All the things on the edges, it just goes away. Now, a lot of people don't do this because they're like, it's so far away, if I'm zoomed out, nobody can even make out. That's true. If you're just planning to use your images for social media where nobody's really going to zoom in, it's fine even if you don't correct for chromatic aberration. But if you are planning to print your shots, it's very, very important that you correct for chromatic aberration, okay? Especially big prints. And why not? Because it's just one click of the mouse. So it's always good anyway to do it. And your photo becomes technically correct, okay? So these two steps have been solved. Now, let's go on to cropping and straightening. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Lightroom again. And the cropping and straightening, so I'm just going to close this, is going to take place here, whereas in this crop overlay tool. So of course, the problem that you see here is that the horizon is not straight. And this is a very, very common problem. A lot of photographers don't correct this. So please do correct this, because unstraightened landscape shots look very casual and they just don't look good, okay? So it's very, very easy to straighten this. There are a lot of ways. I can even rotate it like this, just using the crop tool, but you can use this angle tool with the scale here or the straighten tool. And wherever the actual straight line is, if you can see the horizon, just make sure you run across it like this. Okay. And boom, it just corrects on its own. The downside is you'll of course end up losing a bit of your shot because it's going to get cropped when I hit enter. Okay, but it's always better to just lose that tiny bit of cropping through cropping, but you know, to have an unstraightened horizon just looks very, very casual. That also is an important point, that when you're shooting, try to get this correct, because you do end up losing some sides of the shot because of cropping. Okay, so if it's too unstraightened, you lose more, right? So do pay attention to that when you are shooting. So this is done. We don't need to crop this image. We just had to straighten it. Let's go on to the next step, which is lens and sensor dust and spot removal. So of course, this is again a huge issue. Sometimes this can happen because your sensor has dust spots. Sometimes it can happen because your lens has spots. Either way, spots will be seen if either of these conditions are there. And a lot of times, particularly in cases where you have these bright skies like this, you may not be able to actually see the sensor spots, okay? Till the time you actually take the print out of the shot, and then you can notice the spot. Even here, you can clearly see we can't see any spot, right? But you'll be surprised. So if we go over to the spot removal tool here, and by default, this visualize spots will be unchecked. But if you check this, it kind of gives you this negative film-like look. And that makes it very, very easy to spot these spots, you know. So if I just zoom in, so now I'm already selecting a tool, so I can't click to zoom in. So when you're using a tool like this, and the cursor is not that zoom in cursor, you can hold down space bar. If you hold down space bar, and then that cursor just turns into the zoom thing, and you can just click on it and it's going to zoom. We had selected a very large zoom here to see the chromatic aberration. I don't want 2:1. I'm happy with 1:1. Maybe 1:2 also is fine in this case. And now I can just close this. I can move around, and you can see there are so many spots here which were not visible to our eye. And even for now, I click on disable this, it's still very tough to make them out. You can just start to make these spots out because you already know that they are there, right? But this tool really, really helps you, okay? You can even change the degree to this. Normally this starts off somewhere like this in the middle, but if you increase this slider, you can see all. But you don't need to remove all of these. Just remove, you know, if you take your slider somewhere to the 3/4 part, maybe to 75%, around that much, and maybe more, and then just remove the main ones, because those are the ones that are actually seen in the sky. And how do you remove them? Well, you already have, because we clicked on this, you already have this particular circle here, the cursor. Just click on it, and Lightroom will sample it from a good area in the shot, and it will just copy it back. Okay. Very easy to do. You can also manually move this to some place that you like in case you don't like the area where Lightroom selected. I'll just quickly remove all these. These little ones, you don't actually have to work unless until you're a perfectionist, but it's okay, just takes a very little time, and boom, this is done. Okay, maybe if I just, we'll probably not be able to see the before and after, but let me just use the backslash key. When you use the backslash key, you basically can toggle between the before and after view. So if I press backslash, now we still cannot see, probably, yeah. If you just see here, you know, I'm just kind of bending down because the angle at which my monitor is not showing me the spots. But yeah, when I look at from a down angle, I can see 2 spots here. If I press the backslash key again, wow, that's a tongue twister. This just goes away because of what we did, okay? And now I can zoom out by pressing this, and boom. So our spots have been cleared, and mainly you'll be doing this on the sky, not obviously on the foreground. There are going to be so many spots, but that's going to be because of the texture. So mainly this is for the plain areas. And now if we go back to this document, our shooting and equipment issues have been corrected, okay? So now is the time that we can move on to the second step, which is going to be exposure, contrast, and white balance.